Welcome back to SwitchCorner. Today we're going to be taking a look at Sense Cyberpunk Ghost Story, and this one it's a 2.5D take on the idea of horror adventure. But does it do enough to deserve a purchase, or is this one going to be best left alone? Well, hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we all do here, join our growing family, and let's get started. So first up, this one, it's been surrounded by controversy in the lead up to launch. From what I understand, that's mostly thanks to the size of our lead hero's breasts. Her name is Mei. I'm not here to address that, honestly. I'm here just to review it like any other game, and I really don't see the big deal. It's been out for maybe 6 months on Steam. It's successfully kickstarted as well. So why the sudden attention now? I really don't know. You've seen a whole lot worse though. I do promise you that. It's cyberpunk, and in turn we're seeing a whole lot of body modification, hypersexualization, hypercommercialization, and some very minor violence. So on a story front basis though, I basically read the eShop description and I still have no idea what was going on. You open the game, as I said, taking on the role of Mei, and you end up in a supernatural horror environment of sorts. You're basically trying to escape while digging into a family curse and occasionally meeting a character or two along the way. Basically, Mei's gonna question her own past and even her cybernetic implants along this journey. There were some nice story cutscenes along this ride, even a few minor pop culture references, but the consistency in the tale is probably best described as lacking at best. The ending kinda gives a resolution, but this for sure is not storytelling at its finest. The best way to kind of describe it, I felt like I was reading a book but half the pages were missing. So gameplay wise, as I said, it's a 2.5D horror adventure, so you move left to right, but you can interact with items and puzzles that are both in the foreground and background. There is maybe a handful of combat moments at most, but do not come here for them because they are just absolutely awful. You'll basically move in towards a ghost or an enemy, hit the button prompt on screen, and hope the game basically recognizes the swing you took. I think this one first off would have benefited from just removing combat entirely and focusing more on maybe a stealth level of gameplay. Think something like Seeing in the Coma, which is a very similar experience to this, though I will say now a whole lot better. Fortunately though, combat moments, few and far between, so there is at least that. Just when you do get into them, don't expect this thing to, rock your world. The gameplay though, it mostly takes place within an apartment complex. You're out to solve the mysteries of the location and its ghostly inhabitants. That basically boils down to find items and drag them to where they need to be. The idea itself, it's solid enough, honestly. It's kind of tried and tested, let's face it, but it's not exactly riveting stuff either, and it gets repetitive very quickly. The big problem I found, the strongest moment of this game, it's the opening 30 minutes, the build up. You're exploring the city, you see all this neon, you need to get to this bar, and then bam, it just kind of devolves into one grey and brown corridor after another and never quite reaches the very low bar the opening of the game sets. Sense's main issue for most though, if I had to guess, it would be just how linear it all is. Now sure, it's 2D, so you can expect to be, running backwards and forwards a whole lot from location to location, but every puzzle, every challenge is held back by a key flaw. You need to do everything in a very specific order that the game dictates. An example of this, you come across a wire on the floor early in the game. You click it, Mei describes it, even says, you know what, that might be useful, but the game won't let you pick it up. 10 minutes later, a situation occurs, a puzzle, and guess what? Wire would be a useful tool. So now you need to head all the way back, make that trek across this land, and the game will finally allow you to interact with it. Now repeat this about 100 times and, well, yeah, welcome to Sense. It's a shame as well that most situations kind of boil down to this, because occasionally they do flex their creativity. Maybe you need to look in your journal for a code or inventory, or maybe some pieces need to be moved around on screen. Here the potential shines. They don't all work, but here respect for at least trying something different, and I wish honestly they had taken more risks like this, because I would have been probably a lot more forgiving. The main aim of each floor of this kind of apartment complex though, it's basically figure out who the ghost is of that location, collect the items they need, and then perform an exorcism of sorts, but that can only be done in the exact order the game requires, meaning it's all honestly very low on brain power, just kind of hunting around and clicking on things. To top the repetitive loop off then, Sense has more than a few bugs. Selecting between the foreground and background can be an absolute pain in the ass, and so often I clicked on like move through the door by mistake and ended up in another room. Occasionally the buttons I needed to interact with on screen just wouldn't show up. I had a hard crash that made me replay about 20 or so minutes of gameplay. Some options and interactions are randomly insta-death for some unknown reason other than what seemed to be designed just to piss me off, honestly. And then perhaps worst of all, load screens. It was rare that 20 seconds of gameplay went by without maybe a 5 to 6 second like load screen. Open a door, load screen. Walk 5 seconds to a corner to turn, load screen. Walk to the next door, load screen. I checked as well, these are instant on PC, so this is just for us exclusively on the Switch. Then I even had one point where one key control mechanic reversed on me, so 95% of the time I was pressing the right trigger to sprint. All of a sudden, I had a window where this activated walk and I was sprinting automatically. That was like super random, and it kind of just turned on and then automatically turned off. The idea though, like here, the world is solid, but it becomes one big repetitive cycle, sadly. Though the occasional puzzle, as I said, it does shine. There's just no skill here, no combining of items, or really even inventory selection, just a whole lot of interact with item, take it to location and repeat. I was excited to get into this world, but it quickly turned into a chore. So visually, I gotta say, I love Cyberpunk, from the modified like implants to the neon wash streets, but this one just absolutely wastes the potential. The opening 20 minutes probably or so of gameplay, fantastic. World is unique, it absolutely captures that spirit, but the game, it quickly forgets about this and throws you into those corridors. Occasionally you'll get a glimpse like through a window maybe, but it all feels like one big missed opportunity. On the Switch then, we've not only seen the inclusion of, as I said, tons of loading screens, but a clear graphical downgrade as well, giving everything almost a blur effect. Then the variable frame rate, that floats for the most part between 30 and 50 frames per second, but I did see at more than a few locations it absolutely tanked. I actually got it as low as 9 frames per second, simply walking backwards and forwards on the spots. Outside of that then, Mei, I've got to say, is a pretty badass lead. The ghosts have some decent designs, and then it has this very unique, almost stuttered animation style that I didn't mind personally, but it definitely won't be for everyone. So audio last up, it's fine. More drones, the music's probably the best way to describe it, and then quite a bit in the way of environmental textures. I think clocks in the background ticking, creaks, ghostly like effects and all that good stuff. I was actually kind of impressed with what they've done. It's nothing special, but they even throw in then some recorded dialogue at points. The delivery quality, I'll say questionable, but respect for absolutely trying and for going a little bit above and beyond to create some sort of like audio ambience. So overall, since the Cyberpunk Ghost Story has a decent concept, but now with the surrounding controversy, it's become kind of a much bigger conversation, and weirdly, I don't think there's a lot here to cause offense. The combat is laughable, the game is nothing more than walking about, and yeah, this game's about to sell an absolute shitload more copies than it likely would have without the attention that's been thrown its way. The question is though, is it good? And honestly, gotta be honest, no. Not really. The coma is this game done good, and the design is lacking in nearly every way, from the core gameplay of fetch and drag around items to the load screens that will plague you absolutely constantly. This Switch build, it just breaks immersion like every few moments. On top of that then, a frame rate that occasionally even drops below 10. For me, this one's gonna be reserved for the most hardened of anime style horror fans out there, and the sad thing is, it's very easy to see the missed potential here, and you'll absolutely, going into this, if you're gonna play it, you need to be forgiving. Today I'm gonna be giving Sense, a Cyberpunk Ghost Story, a bad 3 out of 10. There was so many potential good ideas in here, they just failed to deliver on them. And then this Switch build, as I said, it's just plagued with so many exclusive issues. I will say one last thing though to close out. I hope they follow this up, or even maybe, you know, patch the issues here, because the idea itself, it absolutely has potential. So with that, thanks for watching. Will you be adding this one to your collection, and what do you think of the the sudden storm of controversy surrounding the release as well. Is it justified, or is this Twitter getting in an uproar pretty much over nothing? With that, a shout out then to the patrons of the channel who are just going above and beyond to support SwitchCorner. Helps more than you know, so thank you all so much. If you do want to check that out for yourself, I have linked it in the video description down below. Then hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we all do here. Join our growing family, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.